Get right into it. All right. So tonight we're talking about how to be a proactive leader. So what I need you to do is, if you have any questions or any comments, go ahead and chime in. You have to be a subscriber. Thank you for joining us at Pathway to Leadership tonight. And we're a community of leaders. And tonight we're talking about proactive leadership. So in order to be a proactive leader, you need to actively work towards bettering yourself and your team every day. There are several different ways you can do this, as well as things you need to avoid in order to be successful. So those are the things that we're going to talk about this evening. So what does being proactive mean? A proactive leader doesn't wait for problems or complaints, but looks for ways to solve problems before they arrive. So I guess we ought to start a discussion right there. So a proactive leader doesn't wait for problems or complaints, but looks for ways to solve problems before they arise. Let's talk about that. How do we do that? I mean, we're not fortune tellers, but I think we can look at things within our own environments as leaders, and we can kind of speculate, those things that are going to happen. And so let's open that discussion up. We kind of know when things are going to go wrong, or we kind of know that, hey, it's halfway through the month. We have goals and we have things that we're trying to achieve. How do we become proactive and look at those and say, maybe we ought to start taking action now? Or we know it's going to be a tough month and we ought to look at things maybe at the beginning, or we're on a big project. And we know there's a lot of difficulties that are going to be involved in that. Scott, you say a lot of times it comes with experience. Yeah, it does. It does come with experience. And knowing that, we're going to be facing difficulties, we ought to start looking at them, before they start revealing their ugly heads? Yeah. And this seems very simplistic. And remember, Pathway to Leadership is on the simple side. We don't want to get too in-depth on the complicated issues of, say, P&Ls and quarterly projections and things like that in a business sense. But we want to think about, the beginner leader. When we say, we want to be proactive, we want to look at those things that might be coming towards us. The longer in the role you kind of know trends and can plan ahead. Yeah. And I agree with that. Okay. Elliot, start the month with plan A. Always have a plan B and worst case plan C. Well, let me ask you, when you're in charge of a department, okay, hang on a second. I can't get on. Let's see. I got a text message. I can't get on. Okay, so if you're not being, so go to Pathway to Leadership on YouTube and go to live broadcast, and you'll be able to chime in. That's all I can say for that. Let me actually text this person. I'm sorry, but I want to have everybody have the opportunity. Let me just go ahead and with my fat fingers, go to Pathway channel and select live. Okay, so see, being proactive, I should foresee some of these things. So going back with what Elliot said, start with plan A. Plan A usually is the perfect scenario. the the best case scenario. But proactive leaders, they have a plan B, and they have a plan C. So plan A is the perfect scenario. Plan B being, okay, plan A didn't go so well. Plan C is, if everything fails, this is what we're going to do. And, let me tell you, those that think everything's just going to work out on their own are usually in show business and not really in leadership business. Leadership business is having a plan A, a plan B, and a contingency plan. Okay, we'll wait for Stu. Yeah. Is that Stu? Let me see. I can hear you. Okay, good. I'm glad you can hear me, Stu. So let's go ahead. Proactive leader doesn't wait for problems or complaints, but looks for ways to solve problems before they arise. Let's move on. How can you be more proactive? Well, first thing, learn from others. So I have to emphasize this, and let me go ahead and switch screens because I really need to look at you folks. I want to emphasize this. You need to surround yourself with like-minded people. People that want to be leaders. People that you can learn from. Okay? It always goes back to Mr. Pina, who says, show me your 5 friends and I'll show you your future. All right? So on the previous slide, I said, learn from others. Okay? Learn from others. It's amazing what you can learn from others if you just ask. Think creatively. Every day is different. You have to be creative. You have to come outside of your box. And you have to be creative on how you're going to fix things. Whether it be someone calls in sick and you have to renegotiate schedules, having contingency plans. What if all else fails? You have to be creative, always. In the wise words of Ricky Bobby, it's all about the shake and the bake to get it done. I love it. I love it. That was creative. Think creatively. Okay? Because not all problems come with a canned solution. And we do. We have to look outside of the box and we have to make things happen. And that's more on the reactive side. But yet be proactive in thinking, if this should happen to happen, what am I going to do? Ask questions. Asking questions of the people around you, the people that are in leadership, your friends, your business friends, your colleagues, asking those questions. And I think that the big question is always, what if? We might get a little sidetracked every once in a while and say, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? Well, what if it doesn't? Well, the proactive leader says, what if this actually does happen? What should or could or the things that we have at our disposal that will keep us moving forward? So it's not too much to just ask the question, but ask the right questions. What will keep us moving forward? Because as leaders, we're really responsible to keep our careers moving forward, keep our coworkers' careers moving forward, and keeping the company moving forward. Organization. I can't stress this enough. This is a tough one because we can every day our desks and what we deal with, it gets larger. And when we chip away at that, as leaders and managers and supervisors. It's extremely important to be organized, because if things fall apart and you don't have contingency plans, then you're always behind the 8 ball. You never get that opportunity to catch up. And disorganization is usually the #1 contributor to failure. And I really have to be blunt with that. Yeah, you can be disorganized on your desk and everything like that, but in all reality, that's not a good environment for being proactive. Proactive is, unfortunately, it's lining your ducks up in a row. It's taking A, B, and C and putting it in front of you in a way that you can look at it and say, this is normal. This is the way things are supposed to go. And when things get out of place, you can pick out these certain elements and put them back in place to keep the organization flowing the way it's supposed to. It's not easy. You can get discombobulated very easily. You get things thrown at you every day that'll absolutely drive you insane. If you're proactive, you're pro-organization. You have to have a place and a thought process behind every single thing that you do for the organization in an organized manner, so that when it falls apart, you can negotiate those parts back together in the way that they're supposed to be. I hope that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, please chime in. I'm watching the chat, but really, organization is probably the most hand-in-hand thing to being proactive. Organization equals priorities as well. I get you. Hey, Chris Tyrell, welcome to the chat. Nice to see you there. Okay, Elliot, do me a favor. I just scrolled up real quick. Who's Ricky Bobby? And forgive me for not knowing, but I do not know who Ricky Bobby is. All right. Now, delegate responsibly. This is not delegate responsibilities. This is delegate responsibly. So when things fall apart, a lot of times when you're in a leadership role, you feel like the entire weight of everything that's happening has just fallen on top of your shoulders. And in most cases it is. I mean, obviously, whether you're in charge of the department, whether you're in charge of, what you do on a daily basis. I mean, yeah, I can understand that the weight falls on you. However, delegating responsibly can help alleviate some of that pain or some of that weight that falls on your shoulders. Okay, so if you see somebody that's in your organization that might be better suited to help you look at future problems, look at future solutions, then delegating responsibly might be one of the ways of being proactive. And a lot of times, it has to do with relinquishing some of your ego, which is tough too. Sometimes we all get in the position where we want to be in control and we want to have all of our ducks in a row. And we feel that, if our ducks are in a row and everything like that, and we can get through the day and nothing falls apart, then, that's great. But, you got to have that contingency plan. And sometimes you have to delegate responsibly to ensure that if something should happen to fall apart, that you have help already waiting there to negotiate and work through whatever problems you're going through. So that's being proactive. Let's work through the next slide. Ways to practice being proactive. Take action. You're only as good as your next action. Let's dwell on that while I look at some of these chats. Oh, tell again. Shake and bake, baby. Yeah, I remember now, Elliot. Thank you so much. Thank you. Chris, I agree, because when you're organized, you are, wait a minute, when you're organized, you are most like to become overwhelmed and fall apart mentally and react in the wrong ways. Good point. Good point, Chris. Elliot, networking with others is key to leadership growth, but networking with the right people is critical. We all learn from each other. Leaders are humble enough to continue to learn. You know, that's one of the videos that I do have on the channel is how to have humility, how to be a humble leader, and I think it's powerful to learn that. But absolutely, absolutely, you have to be humble enough to know that it's the greater good that matters. It's not the individual. It's not the individual department, the individual project. It's the whole greater good of the entire organization that really matters. So taking action, you're only as good as your next action. So that kind of bothered me when I read about that. You're only as good as your next action. And it's true, because once you get through crisis A, there's always the next crisis that's going to come up. And being proactive will prepare you for how you're going to handle that next action. And you're only as good as that next action, because if we all turn around and said, "Hey, I'm just going to live my life on my past achievements," well then, eventually you're going to run out of past achievements. And that's kind of a lonely place to be. Next would be stepping outside of your comfort zone. Yes. Step outside of your comfort zone. Look forward to understanding the bigger picture. When you look at things in the sense of, if everything that happens is because of my next decision, then you'll kind of get what proactive means. Everything that's going to happen is going to be because of my next decision. That's a big wake-up call. Challenging yourself and your team. Challenge your team to look ahead, look down the tracks, and discover faults. Discover the faults that might be heading your way. And those are really important, to challenge your team and to challenge them every day to look down the road and see what kind of train wrecks might be coming your way. Being proactive means being willing to take risks. You have to take risks every day in order to achieve the goals and successes that are in your future. If that makes any sense. I'm getting some background feeding right now, so if you give me 1 second, I'll be right back. Give me one moment. Okay, sorry about that. I was getting some feedback from a speaker that I had off the back. Let's see. One of the biggest lessons and challenges I've faced is learning to embrace what I fear. Yes. Yes, that's actually very powerful. I like that. Very good. Chris, sorry, I do my best proofreading after I hit send. Yeah, I do that too. So yeah, that's another little thing I do in Pathway to Leadership is if you're ever going to send an email out, especially if it's an emotional email, make sure you proofread it just a little before you send it out. Might be a good idea. So again, sorry for the interruption, but that was really driving me crazy. I've got speakers in the back of me over here. I don't know if you can see them in the camera, but I do have, I'm loving this studio. I do have speakers back there, and it was backfeeding from my own voice, and well, that was driving me crazy. So let's move on. Why being proactive is important. Scott, just thought of this. Sometimes being proactive also means to identify things out of our control and accepting that. You know, that I'm going to read that one more time. Just thought of this. Sometimes being proactive also means to identify things out of our control and accepting that. You know, sometimes it is out of our control. You do, so let's back up. I'm going to back up into the chat where Elliot brought up that you have plan A, you have plan B, and you have plan C. And sometimes what's going on doesn't match up with any of those plans. And then therefore it's pretty much out of your control. And you do have to bite the bullet and say, I have to deal with this. And now it switches from being proactive and trying to come up with every contingency to how do I bring the team together as a unified force to deal with this, understanding that we're not going to overcome it. And I think that might be something that we have to have a discussion all about in a future video. There are those things, those outside influences that, hey, no matter what you plan for, unfortunately, this is what it is. And we have to accept that we don't have a plan for it. So, yeah, I do appreciate that, Scott. I'm glad you brought that up. So yeah, while you have some control over what happens in your life, there's always going to be a certain amount of stuff that you can't prevent. And that falls right in line with what Scott just said. If any situation feels beyond your control, focus on what actions are within your power and pursue them diligently. So here's one of the things that I bring up, and I've taught my sons this. Actually, my father taught me. So you get home after a Friday, you had a tough week, and there's a bill on the counter, and it's more than what you can afford. And they're threatening maybe to shut off your electric or to shut off your telephone or anything like that. And everything is closed. And it's 8 o'clock at night, and there's nothing you can do. Even if you had the money, there's nothing you can do. I think it's really important to turn around and say, what can I do right now in this moment to fix it? And if the answer is nothing, then you have to think about, do I continue to expel energy on trying to fix something that I have no ability to fix right now? I'm going to open that up for discussion. Let's see what you think in the chat. If you cannot, no matter what, fix it right now, what do you think should be the course of action? And let me see what we got popping up over here. Sometimes being proactive also means to identify things out of your control and accepting that. Yes. What really is in our control versus not. So yeah, that's very important. I think that's where I'm going. So years ago, you could only pay your electric bill in person at like a Little Tiger or something like that. So if you got home and they're like threatening to shut your electric off on a Friday night and you can't do anything about it until Monday, do you sit catatonic because you don't have any control? Or if you see there's a train wreck coming and you're trying to be proactive and no matter what, there's nothing that you can actually do to prevent that train wreck, what do you do? And this is about being proactive. So there's certain things that, we have to identify. Yeah, there's things that are going to happen, and yet they're out of our control, and we want to be proactive, but yet we're kind of handcuffed about it. Angel, go to bed. Review tomorrow. I love it. That's awesome. Oh my God. The critical moment here is honesty with self. Sometimes it's not seeing the resources around you. Sometimes it's asking others. Again, problems are dynamic, but true leadership seeks a solution. Thank you. That was really good. Stu, that is easier said than done. You are absolutely right, sir. And Scott, identify what went wrong and fix it so it doesn't happen again. Well, that's learning from our mistakes, right? You may not get exactly what you want right away, but you can at least increase your chances of getting closer to where you need to be. That's a powerful statement. And when we are trying to fix future problems and we are being proactive and, we think, I'm doing everything right. I saw this coming and yet my plans didn't work out. Well, I think that's the bottom line right there is you might not exactly get what you want right away, but you can at least increase your chances of getting closer to where you want to be. And I think that's really important. So at this point, I want to make sure everybody understands that I am working on getting a panel together. I would love to have some collaborators on the channel. I'm going to find a way to connect Zoom with the channel. I do encourage you to share this channel with your friends and family, anyone that you think would benefit from this. We will be in the future having individual one-on-one classes again that we had before. But this channel is open to the public, and I do encourage you to share it with as many people as you can. So thank you for being here. So let's move on. Don't wait for things to happen. Oh boy, are we all guilty of that? You know what? I see this in the future, but I'm not gonna deal with it unless it really happens. Ooh. It's easy to sit back and hope things will improve, but proactive leaders don't wait. They don't wait for problems to come along before they act. And too many times we're like, well, you know what? I understand the concerns, but let's sit back and wait, and maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. Well, again, going right back to the beginning, plan A, plan B, plan C, sitting back and saying, maybe it won't happen, not such a good idea all the time. Maybe putting a little contingency plan in there might be a good idea. The earlier you are able to identify and solve a problem, the better off you'll be down the road. A proactive leader knows that. Absolutely. If you see that you have, I think the best way to put it is, you have to study for an exam. And that exam is going to be in 30 days. Week 1, you're like, okay, I have to study for this exam I'm going to have in 4 weeks. and you kind of procrastinate, and you're like, oh, okay, no, I got this. I'll study. And week 2 comes along, and you're like, yeah, I have that exam at the end of the month, and I got 2.5 weeks, and I can do it. Week 3, same thing. Week 4, it's like, oh my gosh, 5 days away, and I got to do it. Now, the exam is coming. It's down the road. This is really important. But you knew this a month ago. You've had 3 weeks, and now you're into week number 4. And guess what starts to happen? Panic starts to set in. Okay? You had that opportunity to be proactive. Now you've just switched into a reactive. Guess what? I'm buying coffee. I'm taking no-dos. I'm drinking monster drinks. I'm trying to stay awake. I'm cramming. And then that exam shows up, and it's nothing but panic, heart palpitations, and crazy. So as proactive leaders, we don't want to be in that situation, ever. We don't want to be in that situation. We want to know that in 4 weeks, in 3 weeks, in a year from now, we see that obstacle coming or whatever it is, when we're going to prepare for it now. So that just like that person that knows they have an exam, you're not procrastinating for 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden, week number 4, boom, we're going to cram for this. So the earlier you are able to identify and solve a problem, the better off you'll be down the road. The proactive leader knows that. Let's see some of these chats here. I will run it through my head until I figure out what went wrong so I can do everything in my power so it doesn't happen again. Understood, Chris. Scott, pay a little today so you don't have to pay a lot later. I like it. Great. Elliot, leadership never points the finger. It's always inward first. Self-honesty is key. Yes, it is. Okay, moving on. Don't rely on other people. This one you'll find interesting. Keep an eye out for those signs that you need to take control of your own projects and decisions rather than waiting for someone else or something to do it for you. Yeah, because someone else might step in and take control. And not that that's a bad thing, but if you're in the leadership position, if you're a leader of your organization, and you're keeping an eye out for things, you should see things that are coming. And you don't want to wait for someone to come to you and say, hey, you should have saw this. Or actually wait for something to actually break and go wrong before you now have to be in the reaction mode. It's easy to let others tell you what needs doing and when, but don't fall into that trap. So I think what I'm saying there, or what that statement is saying there, is that don't be so complacent in your leadership that, hey, you know what, everything is going good, and if something's going wrong, someone will come and tell me, and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about anything going wrong because so-and-so will come and tell me that it's going wrong. Or I'll hear it here, or this will fall apart, or God forbid, at the end of the month, I'll look at the P&L and say, oh yeah, that's screwed up. I'll have to fix that now. So don't rely on other people or other things to make you all of a sudden decide to be proactive. I think that's a really good point. So in conclusion for tonight, leadership is vital. You can make things happen if you don't know what your options are. You can't make things happen if you don't know what your options are or how to prioritize effectively. That's why it's so important for leaders and potential leaders to think proactively. To make proactive leadership a habit, focus on 3 things: plan, measure, and evaluate. Okay, so let's open up for discussion one last time before we sign off tonight. And remember, share Pathway to Leadership, the channel, and you can go to the website. It's path2lead.us. So it's path to lead us. Okay, path2lead.us. And I've been uploading transcripts of these videos, so you can use that information for your own teachings and handouts if you want to print it up. So to make proactive leadership a habit, 3 things: plan, measure, and evaluate. Those are the 3 things. And at that, I'm going to go ahead and close out tonight's discussion. I really appreciate all of you being here. Again, share Pathway to Leadership. I hope to see you next week. I'll be sending out Monday another video of the week. And great to see you. And thank you for being at Pathway to Leadership. Have a great night, folks.